Hey friend, in this video, I'm going to be showing you how I make watercolor flowers so easy. So if you are new or not so new to painting watercolor flowers, in this video, I'm going to show you just a couple little techniques and steps that you can add a lot of wow and pizzazz to your loose style watercolor florals. When I first started painting this way about 10 years ago, the world of loose style watercolor florals was a bit overwhelming, but it was so fun to just see the colors and the blooms come alive on paper. And so over those last 10 years, I've somewhat perfected my method for loose style florals and for adding little tiny details that make all the difference. So if you want to learn that, then let's dive in. All right, so I have my blooms brush, which is a size 12 filbert brush, and I'm just going to lay down kind of a circular shape of water with a little bit of fluff on the sides. So I'm just using the top edge of the brush and pulling it down toward me or toward the axis point on the flower. And I'm just painting in with water a few different flower shapes. So I like to start super loose and just drop in color using wet and wet technique. First principle to painting watercolor flowers is shape. So before you even pick up your paintbrush and start painting, you want to think about the flowers that you're creating and the style or the shape of that flower. So for example, there are bell flowers, there are cone-shaped flowers, there's star-shaped flowers. So you want to think about the overall shape of the flower. There's some great resources online that really go into sketching these shapes of flowers. I also have tons and tons of sketching tips and shape references in my book, Everyday Watercolor Flowers, if you want to dive even deeper into this. But every flower has an overall basic shape. And whether you're sketching or you're painting that flower, you want to emulate that shape with your petals and with your details and the rest of the principles that I'm going to share. For my dahlia, I'm using the blooms brush on its side and just kind of pulling in these little pointed petal marks. Which leads me into my next tip or principle, which is anchor point. So if you are painting a star-shaped flower, let's say, you're going to have your anchor point and you're looking straight onto that flower at the middle of the flower, the stamen area. Your anchor point is going to be that central point where that stamen is. You want to make sure that all of your petals are pointed back to that anchor point. Every single petal's got to be pointing back to that same spot where that stem connects. So that is that anchor point. A lot of beginners, you'll notice right away that they're maybe new to painting flowers because of the anchor point is kind of all over the place, or they're not having their petals point to the same exact spot on the flower for every single petal. So you want to really pay attention to that anchor point. Where is the stem connecting to the base of my petals? And every single petal should be pointing back to that specific anchor point. So as things are still wet, I'm just dropping in a few other accent colors, maybe some oranges, a few more leaves and stems, just kind of bouncing around with my size 12 filbert brush for these leaves and twisting it around so that the leaf shape is slightly different for each leaf and it's not all uniform. And because everything is still wet, things are going to be really blurry. And I love overlapping some of my flowers with my leaf colors to show like blurry faded leaves on top. So this is just your really wet, juicy, loose base. And now we're going to start to add a little bit more contrast with some thicker color, maybe in the milky whole milk and cream consistency. So adding in detail is a really important piece to painting your watercolor flowers. A lot of times I really like to go in and add white gouache once my watercolor is completely dried. Sometimes I feel like, especially in cherry blossoms, that's the perfect little white opaque punch to adding detail to flowers. And it really can just be some simple dots. It doesn't have to be super extreme or detailed or anything like that, especially with loose style flowers. But having patience, waiting for layers to dry or waiting and just adding little details here and there can make all the difference in your floral paintings. Okay, so now that things are dry, I'm going to go in with more opaque color. So in a creamy consistency with my size 6 round brush. And I'm just laying down a few little curves that I can pull out of my base to show some petals. So if you don't know where to place these details, just picture having one center point on the flower, and that's where your stem would be connected to the base of the flower, and point all of your details to that. So I'm forming around a circle in the middle and just pointing in some petal marks and details pointing into that same point. So forming tighter around the middle, creating kind of like a circle or a hurricane around that. And just switching up my color slightly so that there's some pinker hues and some more orangey hues. And then this one, I'm just picturing like a really tight rosebud at the top. So I'm going in with a really thick consistency of primary red light. And then I'm going to get looser and maybe more transparent as I get further down the rose. And the front petal is a big petal, so I don't want to mark it up too much, but just kind of picture scribbling in petal details here and there, but don't overdo it and don't overthink it too, because it really is all about pointing to your axis point. So now that I'm onto my dahlia, I'm just gonna accentuate the shape of some of these petal shapes. And it might feel scary at first because you're going in with such a dark color, but the more you add these details, the more it'll pull it all together. So not all of the time will flowers be facing directly at you with the center of that flower pointed straight at you, right? Like you'll see flowers on their side pointing at a little angle. You'll see the middle of the flower, you'll see the side of the flower, you'll see the top, the bottom. So adding in perspective of flowers is what's going to really create movement if you're painting a floral composition piece, a full floral or a bouquet of flowers, or a wild field of flowers. You want to make sure to add in more perspectives of flowers, so it's not just the same view on the same type of flower over and over again, because that can look really flat, really boring. So if you want to add movement, dimension to your floral pieces, make sure you're adding in side-facing flowers or top-down or a little bit more angled side-facing than the other one. So you want to mix it up, add in some more perspective. So composition is extremely important, especially if you're doing like a full floral piece or a bouquet. When it comes to composition, you want to think about a few things. So if you're painting a full floral piece that is covering the whole sheet of paper, I like to, because it can be really overwhelming, split my painting up or my sheet of paper up into quadrants. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 smaller individual, smaller sized paintings. And within each of those quadrants, I'm painting floral shapes that follow an S curve. So maybe my leaves and my stems are creating that S curve, and I'm filling in flowers here and there around that S curve. An S curve is how people's eyes naturally want to flow through viewing a photograph or through viewing a painting. You want to lead people's eyes kind of zigzagging or ping-ponging across the piece, because you don't want them to get stagnant and stuck in one spot. So you want them to start higher up over here and then start to get lower and lower and flowing through your entire painting, the entire scene. This is landscapes, florals, doesn't matter what it is, but you want to kind of have them falling in an S curve. So for your full bouquet or your full floral pieces, you want to make sure that you're leading people's eyes with moments or shapes of flowers or contrasting bits in here and there with an S curve. But again, this is not realism. This is just going with the flow. Add little dapply marks here and there. They're really just scribbles. So don't overthink it. The more you sit on one area and fuss with your details, the more it's going to mess it up. So just go quickly. Don't overthink it. Maybe come back to some areas and make them pop. But other than that, just keep it really quick, really sparse, and accentuate the shape of the flower, accentuate the shape of the leaf. So if you're doing one of these peonies or roses, start with a circle in the middle that's tightly wound just above where the stem would meet the petals, and then pull out those bowl shapes from there. So I've got these C curves kind of pointing into the base of where the stem would be and pulling out individual petals. And then for my dahlia, it's kind of like this fluffy star shape. And there you go. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that was helpful in showing you how you can make a couple simple steps to make your watercolor flower paintings a lot easier for you. If this was helpful, let me know in the comments below, or maybe if you have some other ideas for videos that you'd like to check out from us, let me know in the comments below. Also, make sure you check out my Patreon, jennarainey.com/Patreon. If you want to take your art to the next level, we have a community, 2 exclusive tutorials per month, a live art class, and I'm even doing art critiques for certain tiers. So make sure you check that out. It's where you can really blossom and take your art to the next level. And then also my online course, The Art Within, which is going to teach you how to tap into flow state, create and develop your best work as an artist, and so much more. I also have books, so make sure to check out the description with all the links to my supplies, and everything that you would ever have questions about that I do or use is in the description of these videos. So check it out. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.